Ben's teeth were too white for someone who'd never written a single line of code in his life. He stood at the front of the glass-walled conference room like a game show host, waving his tablet like it held the cure to cancer. "This," he said, tapping Athena's dashboard as it pulsed green with uptime metrics, "is the future, and we own it." I sat at the end of the table, same seat I'd taken for the last 8 years, sipping bitter coffee and pretending not to hear the unspoken part of that sentence. "So why are you still here?" He didn't understand Athena. Not really. He saw automation as a magic trick, one that had finally made the magician obsolete. That was the plan, wasn't it? Let the system stabilize, then quietly cut the overhead. Get rid of the woman who built it. Take the credit, brag to the board that you slashed cost by replacing a 6-figure salary with an annual license line item you thought you owned outright. He had no idea what I'd done. Before we go any further, if you're listening and stories like this hit home, quiet revenge, corporate arrogance, the underestimated rising from the ashes, tap subscribe and like the video. It helps more than you know, and it keeps stories like mine alive. All right. Back to Ben and his brilliant little plan. Athena wasn't built inside Core Ledger's walled garden. It was never theirs. It was built through my consultancy, Athena Ops, LLC. Ben didn't even blink when I proposed the structure 2 years ago. Said it would de-risk IP exposure. That's Silicon Valley speak for sounds cool, I don't care. Legal reviewed it, sure. They scanned the contract. Probably searched for anything that smelled like a non-compete or royalty clause. They never noticed the line buried in Clause 9b. License subject to contractor's active service, unless superseded by signed Schedule C. No one ever signed Schedule C, because no one ever read Schedule C, because no one ever thought I'd leave, or, more accurately, be forced out. But we weren't there yet. Not officially. That fall, I'd begun finalizing Athena's learning modules, routing logic, fraud heuristics, API mediation layers for Stripe, Plaid, and ACH, everything that made Core Ledger's payment architecture tick. It wasn't flashy. It didn't post cute Slack updates or make dashboards dance. It worked. Clean, fast, resilient. On November 3rd, Ben sauntered into my office, still wearing that Patagonia vest that every startup bro thinks makes them look operationally elite, and said, "So how's our girl?" He meant Athena. He always called her our girl, which I hated. It sounded like a pet, not a system. I kept it neutral. She's in stabilization. Routing success rates at 93.7% with multi-currency support. Should hit 94% by month end. Ben grinned. "That's what I like to hear. And once she's at 100, you'll finally get to relax, huh?" He meant it as a joke. I didn't laugh. Later that day, I got an email from legal. "Could you resend the license terms for Athena? Just for our internal audit docs." Audit docs. My ass. They'd already signed everything 6 months earlier. The timing was too clean. Athena goes live. They start poking around contracts. That's not an audit. That's a hunt. I didn't argue. I just forwarded the PDFs again. The same ones they'd ignored the first time. Nothing redacted. No warnings. Just the facts. It felt like putting a mousetrap in the open with a sign that said, "Careful, snaps back." Behind the scenes, I was already backing up every Athena config snapshot, every deployment signature, every hash chain that authenticated my IP from day one. I didn't need drama. I just needed receipts, because I'd seen it before. New leadership comes in, wants to cut cost, make a splash, show the board they're aggressive. They think automation is a product. A line item, something you unwrap and plug in like a goddamn Roomba. They don't realize that behind every stable system is someone who chose to make it stable. And they never believe you'll walk. Or worse, that you've already made sure you don't have to. So when December rolled around and Athena hit 94.2% and vendor payments began flowing through her with 0 manual touchpoints, I knew what was coming. The tone shifted. I stopped getting invited to ops meetings. My Slack permissions downgraded. My Jira access expired. IT played dumb, said it was a glitch. It wasn't. They were staging the cut, but I wasn't worried. They thought Athena was the final product. They didn't realize she was the lock, and I was the key. It was the 3rd time in a week Ben stopped by my desk. No meeting invite, no agenda. Just that smug, fake casual walk he did when he wanted something but didn't want to say it out loud. Like he was the quarterback and I was the team doctor, and he was trying to figure out if he could still play without tearing a ligament. "How's she doing?" he asked, nodding toward my screen like he could read code. "Athena's about 91.6% stable across all transaction classes," I said without looking up. "She's self-correcting route weights, and the failover logic is holding through parallel sandbox tests." He squinted like I'd just recited ancient Greek. "So, almost there?" By month end, she should be confidently processing 94% of flows. The last 6% are mostly edge case redundancies. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Perfect. And once she's up and humming, I imagine you'll finally get to relax, huh?" There it was. That word again. Relax. Ben said it in the way people say retire to a racehorse that still wants to run. "Sure," I said, tapping the final line of a routing test and hitting deploy. "That's the dream." He lingered, scanning Athena's dashboard like it might confess something. Then, as suddenly as he arrived, he turned and left, slapping the glass wall on his way out like he was exiting a locker room. That afternoon, legal sent an email. Subject line: "License confirmation request. Athena." Just a polite little nudge. Could I resend the agreement for our internal file hygiene? File hygiene, my ass. They had it already. I knew that because I had sent it to them, twice, and because I'd written it in the first place. My consultancy had worked with a boutique tech law firm out of Boston to draft the structure, specifically to prevent exactly what Ben was trying to do. I opened the PDF from my personal archive and dragged it into the reply window. No edits, no comments, no hints, just the contract. As signed, as binding. Clause 9b. License bound to contractors' active support unless transferred via executed Schedule C. I even double-checked the metadata, just for fun. Schedule C, still blank. No signatures, no initials, not even a placeholder. Without Schedule C, they didn't own Athena. They leased her. And the lease was tethered directly to me. You cut the tether, you kill the lights. But Ben wouldn't see it that way. He thought of software like he thought of people. If it looks calm and functional, it's probably fine to ignore. What he didn't understand was that Athena wasn't just software. She was symbiotic. Her integrations were nested, layered, keyed to an authorization token controlled by my consultancy. That token validated heartbeat pings from the dashboard every 24 hours. No active validation, no payment processing. And yet, instead of asking real questions, Ben was playing chess in his own head. He thought I'd blink first, that I'd come begging for my job back, that once Athena hit 100% and I was relaxed, I'd still hand over control like a good little team player. Or maybe he thought I'd be too grateful for the resume bullet to make noise. Either way, he wasn't probing. He was poking. And legal? They weren't clueless. They were circling the drain with clipboards, trying to find a loophole before the countdown hit 0. Quietly, politely, with smiley faces in the email signature block. But I'd seen this play before. I'd watched talented engineers get booted the week after they finished flagship builds, while executives toasted each other for driving innovation. The trick was always the same. Let someone build the engine, then wait just long enough to claim the keys and cut the cost. Only this time, the keys weren't on their keyring. They were on mine. I started noticing other signals. My calendar access had been downgraded. I was no longer invited to Thursday finance stand-ups. A private Slack channel called Dockag Athena Expansion appeared overnight. I couldn't see inside, but I could see who was in it. Ben, 2 product managers, and an outside consultant named Derek who'd been sniffing around Athena's architecture since Q3. They were planning their clean handoff, a nice, buzzwordy way to say, get rid of the builder, keep the build. Cute. What they didn't realize was that every Athena update they pushed relied on a recursive license token. That token wasn't just a switch, it was a heartbeat. Every change, every deployment, every new integration needed active sign-off from the licensed holder. And there was no Schedule C, which meant there was no transfer, which meant they were dreaming of a handoff that didn't exist. They thought the handoff would be clean. It wouldn't be. It would be surgical, silent. And when the cut came, they'd find themselves holding wires that didn't connect to anything. But hey, let them dream. December 14th was unseasonably warm, one of those Ohio mornings where the frost skips town and you forget it's winter until the light hits you wrong. Everything felt off that day. Too quiet, too smooth. Athena had been live for 48 hours. Not a single error, no escalations, 3 currencies, 6 payment gateways, 2 disbursement APIs, all flowing like I'd hard-coded gravity itself. And still, something hummed under the surface, an itch I couldn't scratch. At 9:42 a.m., I got the calendar ping. Touch base, Ben, 10 mins. No subject. No body. Just the kind of vague summons that only ever means 2 things, promotion or purge. He showed up early. Ben strolled into my office wearing the same smug Patagonia vest, that Silicon Valley startup uniform he wore like a warning label. But he wasn't carrying a laptop. No tablet, no notepad, just a cardboard box. "Hey there," he said, too brightly. "Got a sec?" I already knew. He set the box on the edge of my desk like he was delivering fresh muffins. "Look," he started, tapping Athena's real-time dashboard on the mounted monitor, where everything pulsed green like a Christmas miracle. "You've done something really amazing here, truly. This system is leaner than anything we've run before. Vendors are happy, clients are seeing faster confirmations, finance is giddy." I said nothing. Let him soak in the sound of his own voice. "And now," he continued, smoothing a hand over the top of the box, "now that it's live and stable, well, it's time to cut some overhead. You know how it goes." There it was, the soft ejection. Silicon speak for "we're done with you." No performance review, no feedback, just vibes and budget cuts and Ben's fake humility. "Your role is technically redundant," he added, with a little apologetic head tilt like he was doing me a favor. "But no hard feelings, okay?" He tapped the dashboard again, grinning like he'd personally coded Athena in a sleepless weekend blitz. "She's beautiful. You should be proud." I looked at the screen, then at the box. Then I smiled. Not fake, not angry, just calm. "I'll pack up." Ben nodded, relieved, like he'd expected a fight and was thrilled I'd folded so quickly. He didn't notice my eyes flick to the corner of the screen, the Athena heartbeat ping. Last validated 12 minutes ago. Next ping in 12. He left without shaking my hand, just a brisk "thanks again" over his shoulder. Probably off to tell HR what a smooth offboarding it had been. Probably already lining up a blog post for LinkedIn about building systems that scale. I didn't rush. I packed one item at a time. My thermos, a small photo of my sister and I at Cedar Point, my backup drive, encrypted, triple synced, a copy of the original Athena deployment key still tagged with a green label, authorized system owner, Athena Ops LLC. I left the company laptop, the badge, the charger, and just before walking out, I opened a hidden admin panel only I knew existed. System logs, token settings, licensing heartbeat. I typed 2 words, authorization revoked, clicked save. The screen blinked once, then back to normal. No alarms, no explosions, just silence. But in 12 minutes, the system would go looking for a validation signal that no longer existed. And when it didn't find one, Athena would lock down. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, out of design. The same way a safe closes when the wrong code is entered. The same way your lungs tighten when there's no air. I walked out without saying goodbye. No wave, no small talk. Just me, my box, and the knowledge that they had no idea what they'd just unplugged. Ben thought he fired a coder. What he really did? He severed the lifeline to the thing holding their entire financial engine together. And the worst part? He was going to find out not with a bang, but with a blink. At 7:16 a.m., accounting tried to run the first batch of vendor payouts. Nothing moved. At 7:22, they pinged IT, softly at first. "Hey, we're getting a 503 on the disbursement dashboard. Just us?" By 7:41, the word widespread appeared in the Slack thread. Someone dropped a screenshot. Athena's admin console blinking in red like a digital siren. License invalid. Authorization revoked. By 8 Nioa, Stripe flagged a permissions issue. ACH transfers from their first-line account triggered hard failovers. Status logs populated with errors nobody had ever seen. Errors I'd buried deep in the diagnostic layer, coded in plain English just for fun. This system no longer trusts you. Ben arrived around 8:30, coffee in hand, bouncing like a man who thought the day was already won. He made it halfway down the hall before someone pulled him into the war room, the glass walls fogged with tension. I wasn't there, obviously, but I know how these mornings go. First, the hopeful optimism. It's probably just a server blip. Then the rapid typing, the swearing, the realization that Athena wasn't processing a single transaction, not one. Not vendor payments, not internal reimbursements, not client disbursements, and definitely not payroll. The HR team tried to prep the salary run for Friday. The export file from Athena? Corrupted. The error message? Authorization token expired. Please contact the license holder. That phrase repeated across every module, like a ghost in the machine whispering one message over and over. By 9:12, legal was in the room. They started asking questions they should have asked months ago. Where's the Schedule C? Silence. Someone from finance, probably Elise, muttered, "We never got a Schedule C. We didn't need one, right?" Then came the search. Frantic scrolling through signed PDFs, contract folders, metadata logs, looking for something, anything that said the license had been transferred to core ledger. There was nothing. The contract was still there, unchanged, unsigned appendices. Clause 9b, sitting right in the open, all automation logic, IP, and service continuity remain under contractor control unless Schedule C is executed. Executed, RR, signed, dated, filed. None of that had happened. They hadn't just let me go. They'd pulled the plug on the only thing keeping the lights on. At 10:06, IT tried to force a bypass. Athena caught it, logged it, locked it out. They tried to spoof the heartbeat token using an old copy of the deployment key. Athena rejected it. Stripe issued a compliance alert. Revoked authorization, key usage detected, automatic suspension applied per policy. That's when panic really set in. Vendor tickets started rolling in. Why is our disbursement pending? We didn't receive the wire. Can we get confirmation on remittance? All of them variants of the same question. Where's our money? Inside the war room, Ben was probably cycling through the 5 stages of executive grief: denial, blame, rationalization, legal threat, and finally, the dawning realization that none of it mattered. Because Athena didn't care about titles. She didn't care about department heads or budget forecasts or COO smiles. She only cared about one thing: validation. And they'd fired the validator. It wasn't a bug. It wasn't a glitch. It was the system doing exactly what it was built to do: reject unauthorized operators. At 10:43, someone tried emailing me. A short, polite subject line. Quick question about Athena. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. They weren't asking a question. They were realizing one simple truth. You don't get to keep the automation when you fire the architect. And now, they were locked out. By lunchtime, Core Ledger's entire financial infrastructure was bricked, frozen under the weight of their own arrogance. Athena wasn't down. She was defending herself. And I hadn't lifted a single finger. The war room smelled like panic sweat and burnt coffee. Someone had dragged in 2 rolling whiteboards. One was covered in transaction flow diagrams, arrows, red X's, a desperate attempt to sketch the blood flow of a system they thought they owned. The other? Legal's timeline. Contract execution dates, license references, names, and signatures. But there was one name they didn't want to say out loud. Mine. Ben sat at the head of the table, chewing the inside of his cheek like it owed him rent. Across from him, their lead counsel, Dana Wexler, was flipping through printed contracts like she was sifting for gold and finding sawdust. She had 3 paralegals on standby, digging through digital archives, file revisions, metadata timestamps, anything to prove the license had transferred, anything to show they weren't just squatting on an automation system they didn't actually own. But the deeper they looked, the colder it got. Clause 9b was sitting right where I left it, bolded, unambiguous, and binding. All automation logic, IP, and service continuity remain under contractor control unless Schedule C is executed. Executed as in signed. Schedule C, blank. Metadata confirmed it had never been touched. Not by legal, not by Ben, not even by HR during my offboarding. It existed as a placeholder, dead space in a contract they never bothered to finish reading. The digital equivalent of a sign that says, "Do not touch," taped over a big red button. Ben tried to argue. "She built it for us. We paid for it. It's ours." Dana didn't even look up. "You paid for access, not ownership. The contract was clear. But we use it." "Used," she corrected. Past tense. He slammed a palm on the table. "You're telling me we spent 9 months integrating a product we don't even own?" She tapped the contract. "No, I'm telling you, you fired the one person who made it legal to use." Silence. Across the table, someone from IT whispered, "Can't we just get into the code and fork it?" Dana didn't blink. The code's protected under her consultancy's license. IP is traceable. Any replication attempt puts us in violation of copyright and commercial theft statutes. "We try that," she sues. Ben looked like he might vomit, because now the realization was settling in, not just that Athena was down, but that bringing it back online wasn't a matter of tech. It was legal, contractual, and completely outside their control. They hadn't fired an employee. They'd severed the legal anchor to their most critical system. And now that system was inert. A digital cathedral with no power, no key, no priest to speak the right words. Someone from finance asked the question no one wanted to say out loud, Can we just ask her to come back?" Dana's answer was instant. "She's not bound to us. She was a contractor. No rehire clause, no non-compete, no NDA. She walked clean." Ben stared at the blinking red screen at the end of the room. The Athena dashboard, frozen in failure. License, invalid. He leaned forward, voice hoarse. "What are our options?" Dana folded her hands. 1, you renegotiate with her. 2, you rebuild from scratch. 3, you wait, lose vendor trust, lose payroll stability, and possibly trigger breach clauses with key clients. Another voice. "Can we threaten litigation?" Dana shook her head. She didn't break the contract. You did, by severing the support role before executing Schedule C. Silence again. And then, the final dagger. She didn't burn us. We walked into the fire. In the hallway, a junior engineer pulled up the original onboarding Slack message I'd sent when Athena launched. I'd included a quote almost jokingly, a little signature flourish, I like to add. "Automation isn't freedom. It's a contract, written in logic, executed in trust." They'd broken the trust. The contract followed. And Athena? She did exactly what I built her to do, protect herself from fools who forget the architect. The room stayed quiet. No one wanted to say it, but they all knew. She hadn't left them broken. They'd unplugged their own heartbeat. Now they were standing in the silence, wondering how long the system could bleed before someone outside noticed. The clock was ticking, and they didn't own a second of it. By 4:12 p.m., the number on the whiteboard read 18,634,212.09 and rising. Every hour, finance scribbled a new total across the smudged surface: failed disbursements, rejected payouts. Vendor invoices that had bounced like cheap checks. The room had gone from denial to disbelief to pure teeth-grinding dread. What began as a glitch now looked like a full-scale blood clot in core ledger's financial arteries. Disbursement reports were freezing mid-batch. Retry attempts triggered instant rejections. Treasury tried routing a manual push through the fallback rails, ACH via First Line Bank, and got hit with a compliance lockout. That's when they called Stripe directly, hoping someone on the inside could pull a favor. Instead, they got a cold, automated answer. API authorization has been suspended due to revocation from original license holder. The name on that revocation? Athena Ops, LLC, my consultancy. By 5 p.m., HR attempted their final act of desperation, exporting payroll to the processing vendor. It wasn't just salaries. It was healthcare premiums, 401k matches, end-of-year bonuses. The system returned a flat error. No authorized sender found. Transmission denied. Panic had officially replaced posture, because it wasn't just that Athena was down. It was that every tentacle of financial operation, vendor settlements, client disbursements, tax holdbacks, even basic payroll, had been dependent on her. She was the bloodstream. And now, She was on strike. They tried to reset her. Reboot the cloud instance. Nothing changed. Stripe confirmed the blacklist. AWS confirmed the system license validation server had been shut down at its source. And without that token pinging home every hour, Athena wasn't just locked. It was inert. A corpse in the shape of a miracle. Ben cornered legal. There's gotta be a back door. Dana Wexler barely looked up from her laptop. She didn't build a back door. She was the door. What if we spoof the validation token? We try that, and Stripe hits us with breach of service terms. Maybe worse. License infringement. That API key is legally tied to her operating entity. He clenched his jaw. But the product is ours. No, Benjamin, she said slowly. You paid for access, not ownership. The contract couldn't be clearer. A fresh message appeared on the shared dashboard. A vendor, one of their top-tier distribution partners. We've been trying to get remittance confirmation for 48 hours. Are you still solvent? That word. Solvent. Not broken. Not down. Solvent. It was the kind of term that, if it showed up in too many emails, triggered automated credit review flags, rating downgrades, investor whisper networks. One word could spiral, and Core Ledger had just earned it. By 6:15, Ben was on the phone with the CFO, voice sharp and low. No, I don't have a fix yet, because the system is proprietary. No, not ours. Hers. Yes, we're looking at options. Yes, we're reaching out. No, there's no clause we can invoke. That's what I'm trying to... Look, I didn't think she'd pull the damn key. The key. That's what they kept calling it. Like Athena was a car that wouldn't start and they'd just lost the fob. But it wasn't a key they'd lost. It was leverage. Mine. Because even now, even with everything frozen, they couldn't touch a single line of code, couldn't access the routing tables or the failover logic or the sandbox backups. All of it sat inside Athena, nested like Russian dolls, each protected by license layers and tokens that tied back to my consultancy, not Core Ledger, and unless I agreed to unlock it, they were sunk. No recourse, no override, just a growing wall of blocked payments, furious vendors, and silence from their prized automation system. Ben's email hit my inbox at 6:48 p.m. Subject: hoping we can talk. Body: hey, we recognize things got a little rushed during the transition. We'd like to open a conversation about restoring access and potentially finding a new arrangement. Please let us know if you'd be open to discussing options. Best, Ben, no apology, no acknowledgement. Just corporate speak for please help us fix the thing we broke without admitting we broke it. I didn't respond. Not yet. They were still in free fall, and until they hit bottom, they wouldn't understand. I didn't disable Athena out of spite. I designed her this way on purpose, because systems that can't defend themselves are just open doors. And I don't build doors. I build vaults. December 17th, 10:07 a.m. My phone lit up with a number I recognized but hadn't saved, because some things don't deserve permanence. I let it ring twice before picking up. No greeting. Hey, it's Ben. Silence. Then, look, we were hasty. I let that word sit in the air, rot a little. Hasty, like they'd forgotten to send a calendar invite, not that they'd gutted their own infrastructure and fired the only person keeping the arteries clear. He kept going. We didn't mean for things to play out like this. Everyone's feeling the pain. Vendors, finance, our clients. I want to get things back on track. What would it take to restore functionality? I didn't answer, because it was never about talking, it was about structure, and structure lives on paper. By 11:42 a.m., Ben received the first formal response, not from me, but from Lena, my attorney. Calm, clipped, not a word wasted. The subject line read, request for reinstatement, Athena automation license attached was a clean 3-page proposal, written in the kind of language corporate lawyers respect and tech execs dread. Section 1, reinstatement fee $2.4 million due upon execution of the agreement, non-refundable. Section 2, ongoing support retainer, $640,000 annually, adjusted for inflation and reviewed annually, billed quarterly in advance. Section 3, license conditions, non-transferable, no sublicensing, usage restricted to previously defined operational scope. Any modifications require written approval from Athena Ops, LLC. Breach results in immediate revocation with no grace period. Section 4. Limitations. No reverse engineering. No derivative builds. No code-based audits without written consent. Athena Ops retains full IP ownership indefinitely. Section 5. Non-compete clause. Core Ledger may not develop or deploy an internal automation solution resembling Athena for 5 years. There was no wiggle room, no friendliness. It was a contract built not to collaborate, but to contain. Ben replied within the hour. "Can we hop on a quick call?" Lena responded with one line. "Please submit all responses in writing." They stalled. Tried to argue the price, claimed financial strain, suggested I was leveraging undue pressure. Lena replied with a PDF of the original signed license agreement, with Clause 9b highlighted in blue. They asked for a reduction in the reinstatement fee. We sent over updated failure cost estimates, now exceeding $24 million in blocked vendor payments, $3.8 million in missed revenue recognition, and 3 client contracts at risk of breach due to payment non-fulfillment. They asked for flexible support terms. We sent over archived logs showing 99.998% uptime under my management, and a note that support would be limited to digital tickets unless an urgent response tier was added at a premium. They asked if I'd consider returning in-house under a more favorable leadership structure. I didn't dignify that with an answer, because this wasn't about returning. This was about realigning the power dynamic. They thought Athena was a faucet. Turn it on, turn it off, no matter who built the pipes. They were wrong. She was a dam, and I was the pressure valve. Every hour they delayed, another system backed up. Another vendor called. Another client escalated. The outage was no longer just technical. It was reputational, and Core Ledger was hemorrhaging trust. By end of day, one of their longtime vendors posted on LinkedIn, "Transparency matters. If your platform can't guarantee payouts, maybe you're not ready for our partnership." No name mentioned, but the comments knew. My inbox pinged with another message, this one from a competing fintech firm. Subject: Curious about Athena's licensing model. Available for a chat? I smiled, because this was the part they never saw coming. I didn't build Athena to be used. I built her to be valuable. And now, every hour they bled only made my position stronger. January 4th. Snow was crusted in the corners of the hotel's valet loop, but inside the Westmont Grand, the carpet was too clean, the air too dry, and the smiles too tight for anyone to notice the cold. The Vendor Compliance and Automation Summit drew 1,000 industry people, operations heads, fintech vendors, compliance officers, and more chief digital strategists than the world could ever need. I was the closing keynote. Not flashy, not sponsored, just quietly listed in the schedule under Secure Automation Licensing, Lessons from the Field. The intro was brief, a few polite lines from the moderator about experience, innovation, deep integration knowledge. Then I walked onto the stage in boots that had seen every server room in the Midwest and a blazer that hadn't been ironed in a week. 3 rows back, I saw them. Core Ledger's CFO, Shannon Marsh, and Ben. They didn't know I'd be speaking, not until my face appeared on the slide. Shannon sat up straight. Ben didn't move. I could have opened with fire, could have named names, dropped screenshots, read emails line by line, but I didn't need to. Instead, I told the story. How a payment automation system, let's call her Eva, and was built as a contracted solution. How Eva handled disbursements, currency conversions, vendor syncs, payroll endpoints. Flawless, fast, fully functional. Until the company she was built for assumed she was theirs. Assumed that automation, once integrated, was permanent. Assumed that firing the architect wouldn't matter. Slides behind me showed diagrams. How Eva's licensing worked. The token logic, the contract clause, the missing Schedule C. You could feel the room lean in. QOs nodded slowly, compliance heads scribbled notes. A few engineers exchanged wide-eyed looks, already wondering about their own vendors, their own buried contracts. I kept it technical, but grounded. Automation is often framed as replacement. That's a mistake. Automation is a relationship, and relationships run on trust and terms. Ben had his arms crossed, jaw tight. Every time I glanced toward him, he looked somewhere else. The floor, his badge, the stage exit. Shannon didn't blink. Her expression didn't change. She was calculating something. probably ROI loss curves or the price of public embarrassment. I ended the talk with a slide that held only one sentence. Licenses aren't lines of code, they're leverage. Silence. Then applause. Not loud, not performative, just steady and real. Because the people in that room weren't investors. They were operators. They knew the quiet power of systems that work and what happens when they're taken for granted. Afterward, during the vendor mixer, 3 CTOs approached me separately. Each of them wanted to know more about Athena. Well, Eva. What she could do, how she was built, who owned her. One said, "Whatever you're charging them to turn it back on, it's not enough." I laughed once. "They're still thinking about it." He raised his glass. "Let 'em bleed." Ben never approached me, didn't send a message, didn't nod on his way out. But Shannon did. As the room thinned out, she walked over, professional smile locked in place. "I appreciate your insights," she said. I held her gaze. "I appreciate the lesson." She gave a tight nod. Mistakes were made. Expensive ones. And then she walked off, heels sharp, posture stiffer than when she'd arrived. Behind me, someone asked if I'd be speaking at the Spring Summit in Austin. "I might," I said. "Depends who shows up." Because that room, that day, they saw the story, not just the facts, not the pain, the power. Ben came to the summit thinking he was part of the crowd. He left as the ghost in a cautionary tale. And Athena, she stayed offline, because the lesson hadn't been learned yet. Not fully, but soon. January 8th, 2:17 p.m. The final signatures came through DocuSign with a whimper, not a bang. No press release, no apology, just a file marked Executed Agreement, Athena Ops Relicensing, dropped into a shared folder by Core Ledger's external counsel. One by one, the digital timestamps rolled in. CFO, CEO, legal, board chair. And finally, Ben. His name clipped into the final line like it hurt to write. Athena's system logs lit up almost instantly. License key. Validated. Token handshake. Restored. System status. Full functionality. I watched it all from my living room, bare feet curled under me, mug of chamomile tea still steeping. Didn't even bother to refresh the page, just closed the tab. Core Ledger was back online. Their disbursements flowed. Payroll unfroze. The panic began to fade, but something had shifted. They didn't own Athena. They licensed her, under my terms, at my price, with my signature anchoring every heartbeat she sent out into the world. I never set foot in that building again. Never badged in. Never picked up the exit paperwork they'd printed and stapled like it meant something. But 2 days later, a package arrived from my firm's CFO. Inside was a check folder with a holiday bonus. Not a token gesture, not a few grand, not even 6 figures. 7. My first. I'd always told myself I didn't need that kind of number to feel successful. But when I saw the comma placement, I'll be honest, I smiled longer than I meant to. The same day, Stripe dropped their quarterly partner update online. A clean landing page, minimal branding, just enough flex. Halfway down was a section titled Spotlight Best-in-Class Integrations. Under it, a short write-up on Athena, and then my name, not buried in a footnote, not credited to Core Ledger, just me. Architect of Athena, compliance-grade automation built to retain control. 5 words, that's all. But in the world I lived in, where architects got erased the second the structure stood, those 5 words meant everything. Ben never reached out again. Neither did Shannon, or legal, or the product managers who used to forward my Slack messages like they were theirs. But I noticed something. A few weeks later, Athena's request logs started pulling in metadata from new client domains, competitors of Core Ledger, ones who'd always shied away from full automation, ones who had just watched a real-time case study in control, value, and leverage. One of them sent a note through my contact form. Subject, "Loved your talk. We'd like to talk licensing." And just like that, the arc was complete. I'd left with a box, and they'd begged for a login. Not because I threatened them, not because I sabotaged them. Because I designed something they couldn't live without, and made sure it could live without them. That's not revenge. That's architecture. And this time, I signed every beam.